Wake up. Something has happened. The Spirit of Fire is in a situation I could not anticipate. I hope you can forgive this final breach of protocol. It was a pleasure and an honor to serve with you, sir.
I put up a slide of Curiosity, the Martian rover. It was this beautiful selfie taken on Mars. And I said, hi, I'm David Schwartz, I'm CTO. You're looking at a beautiful selfie of the Curiosity rover taken on Mars. And that's to make everyone think I'm going to talk about Curiosity. You know, we're blazing new trails, nobody has 20 years of blockchain experience, more important that you're willing and able to learn new things than what you know, blah, blah, yeah. But actually, I just put this slide up so Brad couldn't steal my thunder. And now that I'm up here, I can talk about anything I want. Heck, I can talk about parties. And I'm going to talk about parties. I'm a fan of MMORPGs.
Signal to my location, Lieutenant. Let's hear what they have to say.
Companies, bunch of teams. I'm going to use MMORPG terms, but I promise
Security measures would advance without us. It is coming through on a UNSC frequency. This is good. When we left, the war wasn't going well. The signal means the UNSC is still fighting, or maybe we even won. What's the source of the transmission?
Why didn't the tank
We don't have the surface details yet, sir. Something down there is blocking our scans, and without Serena... But we do have a rough location. Should be simple enough to triangulate once we pick up the signal from the ground.
Cutter to Jerome.
Reporting, Captain.
Prep Spartan Red Team and a small recon squad. Professor Anders will send you the coordinates. Find out who's sending that signal. Be on the ground within the hour. Travel light.
Roger that, Captain. Recon only.
28 years, Professor. Let's see what kind of galaxy we woke up to.
This opportunity to share one little detail that actually wasn't shared in the latest blog of Hodor, but it's quite fun. It's not completely finished yet, we're still working on it, but it's going to happen. I mean, there's been a lot of fun about XRP, is it money, is it tip of custodians, stuff like that. And we're actually in the process of getting real licenses for the Tibot and all other activity. Yes. We're not going to stop there, we're also working on, but this is really early stage, and I'm sure we'll hit a lot of roadblocks, but the second stage is getting an actual European banking license. So finally bridge XRP and payments, let's call it the legacy network, let's bridge it.
Pay with XRP now. Around 28. Confirm.
Can I pay with card?
Yeah, of course. Payment received.
essentially took this class and started spending a lot of time with Balaji and kind of hearing a lot of his thoughts on the space, it really kind of dawned on me that this was much more exciting as just like a fundamental primitive for rebuilding the way we do finance. Like, I remember in particular, if I could like highlight a aha moment of sorts, it was like realizing that using the traditional banking system, if you wanted to send money to Zimbabwe, that could take up to a week to clear, depending on the method that you use. Whereas you have this kind of like, albeit primitive and immature technology, that lets you do it in like 10 minutes or less. And that's just like a really powerful idea when you think about where that kind of goes, you know, in the limit. And so, yeah, I would definitely place a huge amount of credit on Balaji's shoulders in terms of kind of inculcating me in the philosophy of the space.
Yeah, we used to call that red pilling someone from, you know, the Matrix, where he's like, do you want to take the red pill? It'll change your life forever. Do you want to go back to the life you've always had? And sometimes people, when they get in the rabbit hole of cryptocurrency, they're like, they just can't get out, and they get red pilled. So.
Check.
Comms working fine, Lab.
Copy that, Tanaka. Spartan Buck online and ready.
Spartan Vale online.
Weapons free. Contact.
Our mission at Ripple is to create something we call the Internet of Value, and I'll spend a few minutes talking about that in just a second. I think we leverage the blockchain, we leverage blockchain technology. As Patrick was saying at the start, everybody wants to talk about blockchain. The hype around blockchain is really off the charts, and having enough gray hair to have been through Web 1.0, we saw, well, those of us that were around, saw pets.com, we saw Webvan. 90% of the companies that just put a .com after the name didn't really need to, or maybe they needed to, but they did it in the wrong way. And having kind of been to this movie before, I see a lot of the same hype existing around the blockchain today. I think it'll be as impactful as the internet was impactful for society. I also think that there is a lot of stuff going on that doesn't make any sense, that doesn't require the blockchain. You know, a database often works just fine for a lot of the things people are trying to do. And so what I'd like to highlight as we chat today is how, at least from my perspective, Ripple is tackling a very specific real-world problem and doing so in a way that I think is going to make a really dramatic impact.
Our next keynote speaker is Mr. Naveen Gupta, Managing Director, Middle East, North Africa, and India for Ripple, the leading blockchain-based global major. He has extensive experience in global transaction banking, payment, and cash management, and strategy planning following nearly 2 decades working for HSBC and Citigroup across the US, Hong Kong, Japan, Taiwan, and India. Now, during his tenure as head of payment and cash management for HSBC Japan, the business was transformed and voted the #1 cash management bank in Japan by Euromoney. He was also the chief architect of HSBC's global initiative on working capital and liquidity management, and in 2008 was recognized as one of the 50 most promising young leaders in Asia-Pac by the Asian Banker. Prior to joining HSBC, Naveen worked at Citigroup in San Francisco as a global relationship manager for technology, media, and telecommunication clients. He joined Citigroup as a management associate shortly after graduating from the Thunderbird School of Global Management in Arizona. He's a former board member of the National Payments Corporation of India, NPCI. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Naveen Gupta from Ripple.
So let's talk about globalization in general, right? So a globalization has essentially three legs. There was something that happened about 70 years ago that made globalization of goods possible. What made globalization of information possible? The way we are able to send emails to each other, we are able to read website, we are able to know any information from any part of the world. I mean, I think this is very easy. Everybody will be able to tell that. What made the globalization of data possible? It's the humble internet, right? That we use all the time. We have a phone in our pocket and we are able to access every information, every ticket, every hotel, whomever you want to, through this data. But there is a third leg of globalization that we feel is missing today, right? Which has not really happened. It's the globalization of money. That means if you needed to move money from place A to place B, it still takes 2 days. It takes sometimes 5 days. Sometimes your money gets lost in the middle when it's moving cross-border, right? You have no idea when it has reached the other person. And a lot of time we don't have the transparency. So for example, lots of you, when you want to send a wire transfer overseas, you would not know how much will it cost before it gets delivered to the final beneficiary in the currency that the beneficiary is expecting. So let's assume, let me ask you a very simple question. How many of you, there's a bottle of water on everybody's desk, right, on everybody's table. How many of you will go to a supermarket and buy this bottle of water without knowing what the price of the water bottle would be? How many of you will do that? Right? Most of us would not, right? Because we want to know what the price of the water bottle is before buying it in the supermarket. But today that doesn't happen in the wire transfer. You essentially send your Omani Riyal. You don't know how many Kenyan shilling will the person get it in Kenya if you're trying to pay a supplier, right? It's only after the fact, after 1 day or 2 days, of course you will have your debit in the Omani Riyal, but you would not know how many Kenyan shilling will get delivered on the other side. It may take 3 to 5 days. Sometime it gets lost. This is SWIFT's own published error rates. Between 4 to 6% of the transactions need some kind of a manual help or have some kind of an error which needs to be fixed before money gets delivered on the other side, right? So to my mind, it is exactly the same in terms of the friction, in terms of the error rates, in terms of the difficulty that is holding back the globalization, the third leg of globalization, that means transfer of money. And that's what Ripple is here to solve. We are not here to make small changes to the existing technology, but we are here to make a dent in the universe by making sure that money is able to move exactly the way an email moves today. That you should instantly able to transfer your own legal money, which is fully KYC'd, which is fully regulated, which meets all the AML and the compliance standards set by the regulator in your country, but it should be delivered instantly on the other side, almost like what happens in WhatsApp. And if you look at today's generation, that's what they're used to. They're used to instant gratification. People are not looking to wait for days, hours, error rates for money to be delivered on the other side.
What is the problem?
There are several. Would you like to discuss the finer points of casual reconciliation?
More human sarcasm.
So you have learned something from me, Jude.
You claim to be able to access...
And I can. However, I did not claim to be able to access it instantaneously.
No time to dither. You will also afford me respect befitting of the Didact's hand.
Seems your fingers are an open rebellion, Han.
Enough!
Ain't good looking.
Eyes on target. This location does not serve my needs. When she makes another transmission, I must triangulate.
I tire of this, Doctor! You have been chasing shadows for weeks to no avail!
Dr. Halsey, Captain Lasky would like a word with you.
It took you long enough.
Is there a piece of technology in fintech that you could think would be most disruptive?
I think we are about to see massive disruptions, but clearly the way in which the new technologies are lowering the cost to make financial transactions more accessible, even in very small numbers, for people who do not earn much, who do not deposit much, and who do not borrow much, and how those technologies can actually have a track record of the credit history of somebody in a very short while, and then be able to direct those people towards the best use of their money, I think is already massively disruptive.
Coming from a web background, and so one of the big problems with Bitcoin was that it was very inaccessible, right? And so I worked on a reimplementation in JavaScript, and the idea was that you could have the user experience of like a MyBitcoin, but have your own keys and have everything signed client-side. And there are limitations to doing cryptography in the browser, especially at that time. A lot of people were like, this is irresponsible, you shouldn't do this. I think now it's a little bit more accepted, but I knew that there were ways to do it reasonably safely. And also I knew there was an improvement over MyBitcoin, and like people always use what's convenient. So I was working on this reimplementation, and I ended up getting so obsessed with it, like, you know, sometimes you have some problem or some project you're working on and it just takes up your whole life. And so I would like fall asleep on the keyboard and like wake up with the keys imprinted on my face and things like that. And I just like, I ate the absolute minimum necessary amount and slept the absolute minimum necessary amount, just coded on Bitcoin all day, on Bitcoin.js. And so as a result, I became one of the first, I think the first person to re-implement Bitcoin, including mining, including the script interpreter, like the entire thing from scratch. And so that gives you a lot of information or a lot of insight into how it works and like what are some of the limitations and things like that. And there was another guy who worked on a Bitcoin reimplementation, Russell, and then of course Mike Hearn, who worked on Bitcoin J. And so that group of us became sort of an important sounding board for the core team when it came to like protocol changes, because it's like, you know, you have different implementations, you want to make sure that from these different perspectives the protocol change makes sense. So I ended up working on pay-to-script hash, and I remember it was like New Year's Eve, and Gavin had proposed some solution for pay-to-script hash, and I was like, that doesn't work, and he's like, yeah, it works, and I'm like, I'll prove that it doesn't work. And so I would stay up, and like my New Year's Eve party was like staying up till 2 a.m. to make a counterexample to show Gavin was wrong. But he was always like a great person to work with. And so yeah, I was able to influence like some protocol features in a small way. I can always compare reimplementations to, think of an engine and you like take it apart screw by screw and then you put it back together, you know? And so it's like you really know where every screw is and what everything does. And it was things like, it was in reimplementations that created like most of the documentation on the wiki. I think a lot of that is credited to Mike, you know, because he had to reverse engineer the source code to understand how it works, and then so he left a lot of documentation for other people. And then also, you find some of the weird quirks, like there's this one opcode that pops one too many things off the stack, and so people never noticed that. I think it's the check multisig opcode. And people never noticed that until they did a reimplementation, and it was like, why does it not work? And like, oh, there's an extra opcode that Bitcoin pops off the stack, so I guess that's just part of the standard now, you know?
What's happening? Why did we drop out of slip space?
have, Ellen. They may have been safer on the Ark.
Responsibility is shared, makes teams work best, same with parties. And goals should be shared. Everyone wants to kill the boss. Oh, sorry, for those of you not familiar with MMORPGs, a boss is an especially horrible monster that everyone fears and wants to kill, but it's also a term in MMORPGs. You also don't want a team of clones. 5 warriors and no healers, not an effective party. You need someone who can do damage, but you also need someone who can heal, someone who can debuff monsters, someone who can take a lot of damage. Maybe if you have an extra slot, you take pity on a paladin. But my point is that the best way to make a party or a team more effective is to add someone who is strong where the party is weak. Your team is your party. If you fail, they fail. If they succeed, you succeed. Your team isn't just the team that you happen to be on, it's really your team. Party on.
You're like a circle that floats around me, keeping me safe and sound. And when I fall, you tied a rope to me. You're blessing me every day. I was down with an illusion, like a sparrow with broken wings. But now I shine with your reflection on me. I'm getting back up on my feet.